education is one that leads to a job. A low quality education is one that students graduate and can't find jobs. See, that's again something that can be judged and evaluated. This was perhaps the biggest point of feedback I have for about almost half to 3/4 of one. You really have to thought, well, how I think is meant by a quality education. Look at college, how we build a system. That many of you do that led to some difficulties. Either right now are pretty fine focus on. So when it comes to the next one, review a little bit of what question to think of your research question. Reading articles that you over are for the class in the class. So the word
keywords, finding key.
So find word synonym is for books because step one you know about what quality modern education word easiest. That's why step one is so important. So you wrote words, not even a sentence. And so then keywords probably basically the only keywords you had were all and because made clear, it became much more. For some of you, you'll find the keywords was the easiest, and for some that was the most difficult. The same work. One, you didn't really spend time saying my mom, what a quality mom education is. And then you think you have some. It's that makes you a better person, make you a better citizen. It's that allows you to make a mission on your own. So when you consider if instead of thinking about topic means and then writing that down, chances are the keywords are the easiest. But if you didn't do that, they were probably the most difficult. So before you go any further when in today's class, I would recommend you go back and spend a little bit more time defining what the topic is, explaining, because then it'll make it much easier to find articles and then find ideas and examples in those articles. Next question. Have I encouraged you to not think about the essay writing day during this research process? Many of you last class were asking how many words, how many citations, and I was really put back and saying, don't worry about that right now. We'll deal with that in Wednesday's class. On Monday, let's just why to think of the essay writing class.
Because it will limit us thinking.
Yeah, you're too quick about the invitations. Like, go actually do the first few stitches. What does the talk mean? And so I was trying to tell you all about the essay writing during the research process, the part one, and if you move too quickly writing, and you haven't done enough thinking and understanding, you don't really have much to say or to write when you start writing because you haven't really thought about what the deeper meaning of your topic is. It's a really nice observation. Move too quickly writing, it's going to limit you. You're going to actually run out of the data very quickly because if all you've got right now is quality modern education, you're going to quality, and you're going to type quality modern education without really being able to explain it in a few sentences or a few paragraphs. When you are reading and trying to find quotes, if you don't know exactly what quality modern education means, the examples you find in the articles are going to be basically meaningless. You're going to be looking for the word quality. When what we've talked about, the word quality actually means several different things. It means participation. For Scarlett, it's getting a job. And so on and so forth. So that step one is absolutely. So last class, how many of you spent 5 or 10 minutes looking up a definition of what quality education is? maybe watching some videos. What do other people say is a good quality education? And what makes an education good? Is it fair to say that many of you did not spend 5 or 10 minutes just thinking about the idea? And don't worry, no trouble. I'm just trying to point out that you move too quickly. And that's the whole point of the next, doing everything. And then we're able to spend some time talking about who did this first part. Which parts did you perhaps not go slow enough on? Which parts did you do too quickly? And I'm read your comments. In step 1, in part 1, it was that first part. 5 minutes, 20 minutes even. Here's how I would define what a good quality education is. Mom, or to my dad, or to uncle or aunt. And if you thought about that and just written it up, here's what I would say to them. You would right now be in a much stronger position. Is that okay, everyone? And I'm seeing from Gersimer and Gerline, they agree, like, yeah, they moved too quickly on that one. And because of that, it made the rest of the work much more difficult. Chances are the reason you moved too quickly through that is you were already focusing on the essay writing next week. And this is often a very common error or mistake made by college students. They're given an essay assignment from their teacher, and rather than thinking about what they know about the topic or what they need to learn about the topic, basically understanding the topic, they immediately jump to, okay, so what can I start writing? And often they start writing before they have something to say about the topic or explain about the topic, which results in an essay that doesn't say much, doesn't really have much or useful good research. And the result is then, yeah, they started writing immediately, but they didn't get a very high mark because they didn't say anything. So this part 1, the research process, the steps you went through last class, is absolutely important, but it's something you want to take time on. Not just on the looking for articles, it's the understanding of the topic. And I guarantee you that for about half to 3/4 of you, that was the biggest difficulty you had because you moved way too quickly. What you can do after class today, take a look at how other people defined step 1. I think there were 1 or 2 of you that actually wrote a paragraph of here's what quality modern education means. And when I read it, I said, oh, okay, this student is basically explaining what this means to their mom or their dad. They just wrote it up. But those students had no difficulty doing the rest of the work because they thought about it. Is that okay, everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so next question. Consider the work you've done so far. You might notice this in some of the content to you. Why have I encouraged you to avoid questions with a yes or no answer during this part? Because some of you actually wrote questions that were either cons or positives or yes or no. And I tried to push you away from that. Why do you think that is?
Because it will lead us to write against, I think.
Yeah. If you have to pick yes or no, you're basically taking a side in an argument. And as I pointed out to you last class, argument essays are a trap that sometimes a professor will give you because in order to successfully make an argument, you need to be an expert on the topic. And most of you as first-year college students are not yet expert on most topics. So you want to avoid questions that force you to pick a side. Yes, this is good, or no, this is bad. Well, honestly, how do you know? If you've only read one or two articles on the topic, how do you honestly know what is good or bad? And you have to be honest here with yourself, saying, well, no, I don't know. So I should avoid being stuck having to make that type of judgment. So a few of you actually wrote questions where it was either X or Y, like you were going to pick. In the same way as yes or no or good or bad. And what I suggested in my feedback was stay away. Move away from that. Rather than canceling or starting over, what you can do is you can reorganize the ideas in that yes or no question you have into one of the other three styles. But you really want to avoid questions that either require you to take a yes or a no, to take a side. So those are three things. Avoid yes or no. Try not to think too much about the writing process during this research process. And what was the third? Spend time on step one. Really come up with a clear, simple understanding of your topic before you do anything. Those are three things I wanted you to think about regarding the work you did last class. Because it's absolutely important. Because this way you're able to now focus your energy and, okay, in steps 1 through 6 from last class, spend a amount of time on that. I do that much here. That makes step 3, coming up with simple questions, much easier. Picking a question to focus on, well, that makes it easier because I understand the topic better. When I'm searching for articles, I'm now able to recognize if an article connects to the topic in my thinking because I've thought about the topic more. I have different and more ways to talk about it. So I'll be able to see how articles fit. So the majority of your time during the research process is really spent in step 1. Any questions about that? Because that's the thinking I wanted us to think, or actually to do and to discuss at the beginning of today's class. And this is the type of thinking that we're going to do after each step, after each part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. I'm going to point out, well, you did this, but what if you'd spent more time on this part? How would that change the work you've done? So think about this. If you had all spent 30 minutes on step 1, which was define the topic, how would that have changed the rest of the work you did? Would it have made it easier or more difficult?
Easier.
Okay, why? Because just saying it's easier is one thing. How and why would it have made it easier?
It would have helped to narrow down the topic, like choose some of the subtopics.
Yeah, because remember, you can do that. You move from a topic that's really general, real quality. What the hell is that? It is huge. And you can then narrow it down, as Bowen just said, to a more focused subtopic. How do you define if a school is successful? Does quality education equal getting a job? Oh, so those are particular relationships. Those are subtopics that actually would interest me. Because maybe I've been having this argument with my mom and dad for years. They keep saying, no, you're going to go into nursing. No, you're going to go into business because those get jobs. But I'm interested in art. I'm interested in philosophy. I'm interested in some other topic. How am I going to have this conversation with them and point out, no, a good education doesn't automatically equal a job. It first equals being a good person, being a good citizen, which means you understand the world, you understand your community, and then you can get a good job. So that's how when I was thinking about this topic, would imagine my own work. Like, okay, so I'm probably going to spend a half hour or an hour just thinking about what this topic means and coming up with definitions before I do anything else. Because if I have a clear definition, one that I'm actually interested in, it'll make the rest of the work much easier. So I would encourage you, before you go any further, to go back to step one and think about, so what am I actually interested in regard to this topic? Like, what subtopic is either of interest to me or makes the topic easier for me to understand? I'm going to ask you all to do that work right now. Give yourself 10 minutes. Hit reply to your post. So don't go back and reread it right now. Just hit reply to your post from last class in the discussion and redo step one, which is, what's the meaning? And Gursimran, yeah, at this point, quality modern goes down on some topic, some subtopic inside the idea of what makes for a good education. Is that okay, Gursimran? Okay, and so to do this, because I want you to keep your work, find your post from Monday, feedback that you just hit reply to my feedback to you, and then go read it and actually spend a few sentences, like full sentences, right? I think this is how I would explain the topic to my mom. Imagine your audience right now. It'll make it a bit easier to figure out what you want to say. 10 minutes to 8:45. Take your time here, because the more you think about this, the easier the remaining work will be. Any questions? Okay, so if you do have a question, let me know, but I'm going to check in with you at 8:45 in 10 minutes time. Hi, everyone. As you can see, while you were working on this, I was just doing Google searches. I wonder what other people think is the meaning of quality in education. I found this interesting YouTube video from a high school student. Looks like it was a school project she had to do, where she had to define what she thinks it is meant by quality education. And it gave me all kinds of ideas. Oh, maybe it's what is called a well-rounded education. She does volunteer work. She's on a sports team. She goes to school. She tutors other students. Like, oh, maybe that's what is meant by a quality education. Being well-rounded, having many different interests. I was just looking at a video by a young Pakistani woman named Malala, who is a famous advocate for women's rights and girls' rights, talking about what a quality education would mean for young girls in countries where their rights are not protected, and how having access to a quality education, meaning they're protected so girls can have the same level of education as boys, how that would have a positive effect on society. It was a 2-minute video I was watching, but it's quite interesting and quite moving because she is about your age. And she's talking about her experiences growing up in Pakistan, where girls in her community are not as valued as boys. So the meaning of what is quality in education ends up being very different depending on who you are, where you are, and in this case, what sex or gender you
学
are.
校发邮件儿，然后连黑户
Because
带
for
吓
her
唬的，
and girls like
说
her,
什
it
么
gives them the
不回
right to
去，什
say,
么
you
影
know
响
what,
婚庆
I
和
don't have
毕
to be
业，
married at the age of 14
要全面支
or
持什么
16.
BC
I
省
have
教育
other
部的什
ways
么
to take care of
什么
myself.
全面线下复课
And it's
计
giving
划。
girls in her situation more rights to take care of themselves and not just be passed from their parents' family to the husband's family, where they have very few rights. And myself, being of Indian Punjabi descent, I was saying, yeah, I know women who would probably have, if they had had an opportunity to get more school, might be in a better situation than being now in a marriage where they're unhappy. So maybe that's one way to define the purpose of a quality education. I can keep going because right now I'm just thinking about what this topic might mean and all the different subtopics within it. And there's so many. Let's see, what's another video? Oh, and all I did was quality in education. I'm just looking at lists of YouTube videos. Because as I said to you before, I prefer watching YouTube videos than I do reading. Because it just gives, I find it an easier way to learn about different ideas. So, let's see. So I'm coming across a lot of videos by Pakistani women who are teachers talking about how access to quality education gives girls in certain communities more opportunity of having a better life. And then in other examples, I'm finding people talking about the idea of being well-rounded. Quality education means it's not just about taking your classes and getting a high mark. It's about taking your classes, but also doing volunteer work. It's about taking classes and then maybe volunteer work. It's being a part of an extracurricular team or a club. It's that social part of being a student. Gersimer is asking a great question. can we use materials from YouTube videos or other video sources in essays? In some of your classes, your professors might say that is acceptable. You can't use videos. For me, in English 100, because this is a writing class, I'm going to push you to only use writing sources, so articles. But during this step 1 of the research process, you can watch all the videos you want just for explanations. And that's what I'm doing right now. While you were doing that, I was watching videos. Oh, I hadn't thought about that as a way of defining quality education. Is that okay? So, the research process really is an opportunity for you to explore what the topic means in general, according to other people, and then what part of the topic you personally have an interest in. And for that, I always use the example, if I'm going to explain the importance of this topic to my mom, what am I going to focus on? And then I think about, well, what about her life experience? Her father, my grandfather, really pushed her and said, if you get a good education, you don't have to be dependent on a man. So my grandfather, almost 70 years ago, in India, had this mentality. Like, he was telling his daughters, and he had 5 of them. I have my mom and 5 aunts. He was telling them all, I want you to get an education, not just high school. I want you to go to college or some type of technical diploma after. So that way, when you get married, you don't have to be dependent upon your husband. And then the relationship will be more equal. I know that about my mom. So perhaps then, if I'm going to explain why a quality of education is important, I would use that example with her. And that automatically then makes me start thinking about, so the definition or the meaning of quality education is probably different depending on your gender. For men, it might be about getting a high-paying job. For women, it might be about being considered an equal and getting a high-paid job. So in this way, the topic, or specifically the subtopic, works differently depending on who you are, where you are. The meaning for that YouTube video, she sounds like she's a white girl from America. Very different living conditions and expectations than, say, Maala, who was a young Pakistani girl in a community or culture where women are sometimes considered second to men. If you are from a developing country, one that is perhaps not fully developed, here I would use the example, like economically developed, I would use the example of maybe China in the 1980s and the 1990s. The governments there spent a lot of money in the education system, recognizing that if China was to industrialize quickly, it needed citizens that were well educated. Did it do a perfect job, the government? No. But the number of students who had access to going to college or university in the 1980s and 1990s in China went up almost 50%. Sorry, not 50%, 50 times. And with that, we've seen China, just in the last 30 years, become the biggest economy in the world. So quality education in the Chinese example means something perhaps a bit different than it does in America or Canada. And it also means something different than it might in India, which is probably maybe 20 or 30 years behind China in its economic development. So you can really think about the many different subtopics, the smaller topics within this larger one, to really explore what your interest might be. How are we all doing? Naomi's making a face like, I'm not sure now. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So, what would be the most useful? Would it be now that you have a stronger definition of the topic and its subtopic? Would redoing steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 be useful? Because the keywords will now be easier. Coming up with a question, even with using some of the feedback I gave, would probably be, oh, okay, I should focus on this based upon what my original Monday interest was. It might have just changed. Gersimer asked if the subtopic can be what you wrote in step 3. It could be. You might have begun focusing it there. But you probably focused it there if you spent the time in step 1, coming up with a clear understanding and definition. If you didn't, that focus in step 3, the subtopics, probably doesn't make a lot of sense right now. Would you agree with that, Gersimer? Okay, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. And I'm going to give you 45 minutes to do this. Naomi's like, her eyebrows went up like, 45 minutes? I'm going to ask you what you just did right now, where you redid step 1. And then let me share my screen. And I was honest, I was just looking at YouTube videos while you were all doing this work. Okay, so here is Gersimer's redo of step 1. And you'll notice, when you compare what Gersimer did to his original, he did good work. He wrote a few sentences, but it wasn't perhaps focused on a subtopic. Now, what he's done is he's given more details. And that's great. He's actually given a lot more details, a lot more examples that will be helpful to him. So, what I'm going to ask you to do with your step 1 is, when you press these 3 buttons there, 3 dots, you can edit this post. So you can make more changes to it. I'm going to ask you to do steps 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, you're going to find this time it's going to be much easier to do and much more focused, because you're going to have more of your thinking explained in step 1. Once you're done that, then take a look at the articles you found last class. Do any of them connect to your new understanding, your better understanding from today? If so, keep those articles. Paste them into this new post, this redo post. If they don't, which is fine, then start redoing that search using the library database. The reason I'm giving you 45 minutes and not 90 is now because you've done this process once last class, and it took you, many of you, longer than 90 minutes. By practicing it a second time, I'm getting you to do it faster, because it should be faster the second time around. Would you agree with that, Naomi?
Yes.
Yeah. And in 3 weeks, when you're doing this type of work on the final exam, you'll probably be able to do it in 20 minutes. You'll be even faster. And so that's what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to redo the work you did on Monday. Once you've gotten to step 6, take a look at the articles you found last class. You might find that, oh, I can use that one, but that one doesn't fit anymore. I can use that one, but that one doesn't fit anymore. And then you can look for those articles. And here's a trick. If I'm Gersimer, I could go look at, what were Bowen's articles she found? Maybe one of those will connect better to my topic. So you could actually look at what other people did and the sources they found as a shortcut. And you might find one or two that fit better for you, and then all you have to do is, okay, I'll copy that one to my post. That's the other reason that you're doing this in a discussion, so you can actually see other people's work and build upon each other's work. It's an extra resource. If after you review a bunch of these, you do not find an article that fits, well then you would go back to the library database and continue and try redoing it. I'm going to check in with you at 9:50. So 49 minutes from now. At which point I'm going to ask you to hit post. If you finish before then, that is fine. Take a break. But this time around, I'm asking you to do it faster and, more importantly, to have spent more time doing step 1. So you have a much stronger understanding of your topic and all the many subtopics. Any questions? Gersimer, you have a question? I think you had one. Your hand was up for a moment. Was that a... Okay. Before I shut my mic off, I want to check. Naomi, looking at your face right now, you do not look happy.
I'm a little bit confused that step 1 is from my own perspective. I think modern education of high quality is, or from others' perspective.
That's a great point. It could be 100% your perspective. However, when you first came across this topic on Monday, quality modern education, did you know what it meant?
No, I need to search.
Yeah, so you'd have to search and learn more, and then you could just write it in your own words. And so then you could say, well, this is from my perspective, but I learned it from other places. You don't have to cite that right now. But that's why I was looking up those YouTube videos, and then I even posted that article from the HuffPost. I just Googled that and it popped up. Oh, somebody trying to define it. Ewan texted me and said, or messaged me in the chat and said, oh yeah, I actually found that article and I used it when I was working on Monday. So in step 1, it very much is your understanding of the topic. That understanding, of course, comes from learning a bit more about what the topic is. You're the one writing it in the end. And just imagine you were writing it, or this is a class presentation. You have a couple of sentences you now have to present to the rest of the class. Here is what Naomi thinks is the meaning of quality in education. That's why I posted that YouTube video, because that's what that student, the high school student, was doing. She was giving her definition of, here's what I think it means.
Oh, okay.
Okay, does that help, Naomi?
Yeah.
Okay, marvelous. And if any of you have other questions, Gersimer has one he posted in the chat. I'm just going to read it out to everyone. He wants to ask one thing. So now his main focus would be on the problems with modern quality education. So now all my steps would change accordingly to it. So Gersimer, my feedback to you last class after you did that work was it seemed as though you were interested in the problems and solutions of modern education, or the modern education system. how it's currently organized. If that's still your interest, yeah. So now, let's imagine you're talking to your mom. Mom, these are the following problems with how the current education system works. I think this is maybe the biggest problem. And you would explain what that is. And so then your step 2, step 3, step 4 would be focusing then on those problems, which means you'd be looking for, eventually, articles that discuss major problems with education and or solutions to those problems. Like fit ways of fixing those. Gursimar, does that help with your question?
Yes, Professor.
But do remember, my feedback to you all was based upon the work you did last class. If your definition, understanding, or meaning of what is meant by quality modern education has now changed a huge amount, that feedback might change as well that I gave you. But if the feedback I gave you actually maybe popped an interest in you, like, oh, I am actually interested in that. Well, then keep going with that. But now explain that interest in step 1 to your audience, which is, as I always say, it's my mom. So I'm going to explain to my mom, here's what I'm interested in this topic. Okay. Perfect. If you have any other questions, let me know. I am going to shut my mic off. And I may shut my video off for a while as well. But
Professor,
yes,
I have one question too. I want to go with problem solution. And can I just go with explain many problems, like 2-3 problems, and these are the solutions, like 2-3 solutions to it, or just have to have a particular focus on the particular topic?
At this point, you would have to think about, well, how many words do you have in an essay? And if it's 1,000 words, so it's basically a 5-paragraph essay. If you have one paragraph and you have 3 or 4 different problems listed in it, are you really talking about any of those problems in detail? Are you explaining it? Yeah, and so I often recommend focus on one problem and then give many solutions to that one problem, because the problems have been around for a long time. If it was as simple as one solution, it would have already been done. Right? So if you're interested in problem solution, pick one problem. And then you can research, what do different experts say are different solutions to this one problem.
Oh, okay, so there's going to be one problem and solutions.
Yeah.
Many solutions.
Could be, yeah, many solutions. And the way I always think about this is, if it was as easy as one problem, one solution, the problem would have been fixed already.
Yes.
And because the problem is still there and you notice it, that means the solution is probably quite complicated, and there's probably several different ones that are in competition with each other. Okay, Paul? Great question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, everyone. I will check in to see where you're at 9:50. Your goal is to redo these steps 1 through 6, and then take a look at the articles you found last class to see if they still fit. If they do, copy and paste them in. If not, then you would look at what other people have, and you might find an article that works. And if still no, then you would redo your library search, looking for those extra articles. I am going to go make myself a cup of coffee, but I am still here. So, Sungmin, I often suggest start with the least amount of work first. Take a look at the articles you already have. Do any of them fit the work you've done today? If so, keep them. If not, then any extras you need, you would go and do new research searches. Sungmin, does that make sense? And Sungmin, for you and everyone else, you can look at everyone else's list of articles as well, and you might find someone else has an article that would be useful to you. Well, everything's being shared right now, so you can use someone else's article as well. So, whether or not you have completed all of this or not, I'm going to move on. My request or my suggestion is that you continue and finish this work if you need more time after class ends. But I want you right now to find your most recent post. So the last thing that you just posted, what you were just working on for the last 45 minutes. Find that post and hit reply. You're going to post something new here. So I'm just going to refresh. So here is the work that Kersimmer was just doing, his redo. Kersimmer, hit reply and open up a new post. All of you do the same. Now, in the post you're going to reply to, without looking back at the work you just did, write your research question again. So what question are you going to try to answer in your essay? Don't look back, just type your question and hit post. I'll give you 2 minutes to do this.
气氛组给发多少钱工资？
有没有香槟宝贝啊？没有品牌这一块啊？
操，都香槟宝贝儿，还要香槟宝贝儿呢。
有没有啥辣味儿？挺味儿。
哎，我在呢。
给我查一个，你可以给我走来。
啊，好嘞。
Okay. You've hit reply. You've posted your question. Hit post. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to focus that research question. Compare the question you just wrote to your research question from last class. And I'm going to ask you to share this either in the chat or by unmuting and sharing. How can you explain any changes that have taken place to the question? Or if there's no changes that have taken place, how do you explain that? For the question you just wrote, has it changed from what you did last class?
No,
Okay. Why not?
because I think my question is specifically I'm interested in, and yeah, so
Oh.
I didn't change it.
Okay, and that's fine. The reason we've been doing this work for the last 15 minutes was not necessarily to make a change. It was more that now you're more comfortable and confident. Well, no, I didn't need to change it because I know how this is interesting to me. That's the most important thing. If it did change, it's because, I made it more interesting to myself, so I changed it. Or, as Naomi just said, I was already interested in it. But that's the whole point of spending the time doing step 1. Learning more about the topic, being able to explain it to others so that we can focus on the subtopic, our interest, and then we develop it out from there. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to, I'm going to hit refresh. Okay, so I'm going to start with Roxy's question here. Compared with traditional education, what are the advantages and disadvantages of modern education, which is gradually moving toward independent learning on the internet? Is this a simple question in its current form, or does it seem a bit complicated?
think it's simple to search some IC to support this.
Okay. Bowen, how would you paraphrase this question? Because that's the test, Naomi. If someone else can read it and paraphrase it easily, then you know it's simple.
I don't know. I'm not able to.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to ask each and every one of you to do with your question, the one you just wrote. You're going to rewrite the question in one of three formats. Problem solution, cause, effect, or compare, contrast. So, Naomi, your question, your current question, which of these three styles does it fit?
Compare and contrast.
Yeah, and Bowen, how do we know that?
Because she's comparing.
She uses the word, so there's the hint. She's comparing two things. And so when you look at each of your questions, you'll see that you've used some of this language. Problem or a solution, your question. Causes or reasons, effects, results, or compare similarities, differences, advantages, but you're comparing two things. So I'm going to ask you all to rewrite your question one more time, but using this language. So for Naomi, much more directly. And I'll show you what this can look like. When comparing traditional education to modern, see, we're naming the two things that we're going to compare right away. What are the advantages what are the advantages of modern education? What are the disadvantages of modern education? So now, I'm hoping you all see what I did, because when we're comparing traditional to modern, well, we are in modern education, so we're most interested in that. So what are the advantages of modern education? And then what are the disadvantages of modern education? And you notice we broke this up into two questions, two very simple questions. The same thing will go for problem solution or cause and effect. A simple problem question. And then what are the solutions? What are the causes of something? What are the effects? We're taking our existing question, which is really what Naomi is saying here, but we're trying to reorganize it and make it a bit simpler into two simple questions. Bowen, when you read this, does what she's planning to do make it easier for you to understand now?
Yes, because I can see like she's intended to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of modern Education.
versus traditional. We know what she's going to be comparing in her discussion. And as Gersimer points out, so to compare both, don't we need to know something about both of them? Yeah, so that's now the type of research Naomi has to do. What did traditional education look like? How has it changed in modern times? So she now needs to know something about both that she would have to explain through examples, that she would then compare. Oh, this is how the modern way is better. Oh, this is how the modern way is worse. So you're right on that point, Gersimer. She's going to have to now find examples from her readings of both. How did we teach math 100 years ago? How do we teach the same math idea today? So when you look at your question, does everyone think they can break their question up into two very simple problem solution questions, or cause and effect, or compare and contrast? Well, Naomi, I just did the work for you. How about everyone else? Do you think you can do this? Gersimer is confident. He started with, I guess, but now he goes, no, I can do that because I was just simplifying it, trying to make it step one, step two. Compare similarities or advantages, and then disadvantages. I'm going to ask you all to do this with your question right now, the one you posted 5 minutes ago. Hit reply, or just hit edit and rewrite it in a simplified two-part. So it's two separate, simple questions. Okay?
Professor?
Yes, Gurleen.
Like we have to follow all these three patterns, like we have to make question for all these, or
No.
we have to choose only one?
You're choosing one, so look at how you've written your question already.
Okay.
Like how you wrote it 5 minutes ago. Did you use any of this language or any of these ideas? Like, were you focusing on problems and solutions? Were you focusing on compare and contrast? Were you focusing on cause and effect? And so, Gurleen, which one were you focusing on?
I guess problem and solution.
Okay, so then simplify what you've done by just saying, here's my problem, here's my solution.
Okay.
Okay? So 4 minutes to 10:15, everyone. I'm going to hit refresh because I need to find Bowen's post. And where is Bowen? Because I'm about to show you how the work we just did will be very, very, very useful to you now. There you are. Oh, Bowen, have you deleted the cause one? No? I'm going to do that for you because we don't want to get confused. So you want the problem one, right? What are the problems with the current teaching methods? Notice I'm breaking this into two simple. What solutions can be done? Okay? Now, this means there's two things that Bowen is going to have to answer in her essay in a few weeks. What are the current problems with the teaching methods? And what solutions? And that's it. Those are the only two things she's going to have to answer in her thesis and in her paragraphs, which means these are the types of examples she needs to find from her articles. That's it. She doesn't have to understand the main idea of every article, She doesn't have to understand every single example and explanation. What she's looking for is, well, what are the problems and what are solutions? Those are the only two things she actually cares about in the article she's using. Does that make sense to everyone? So here's how you can now use this question. I'm going to hit reply. And I'm going to insert a table. Article. I'm going to take her first question. I'm going to take her second question. We're making a table for notes now. When she goes to read her articles, she's going to be filling this out. So let's go back up. Here's her first article. I'm just going to copy it. So when Bawin goes to read this article, if she's going to use it, what are the only two ideas she's interested in looking for from this article?
Problems and solutions.
Yeah, but what specific problems is she looking for? Read her entire question.
Yeah, the current methods of teaching.
Yeah, so problems with the current teaching method. If she finds an example of that in this article, she records that idea example there. Next, solutions to problems with the teaching method. If she finds that idea in this article, she records it here. And that then is the only thing she's looking for in that article. Ideas, examples that answer these questions. If it doesn't answer these questions, ignore it, Bawin. Is that okay?
Excuse me, Professor.
Yes, Christopher.
So this means that our whole research depends on this question that we wrote.
Yeah, that's the point. Because your essay is going to answer this question, which means all the ideas you find in your research is to answer just this question. That's it.
So
Other ideas. Yes, please.
Sorry to interrupt you. So, what about the other question that we write in the step 3?
Remember, that one was just to start thinking about different ways to understand the topic, right? So in order to get to our more specific question now, like Bawin's question right now, in order to get here, she first had to explore what she found interesting about the topic. And when she did her why question, her how question, her what question, she began to focus not on modern education. She started to focus on teaching methods. Like that's how she got to her subtopic, by asking those questions in step 3. Bawin, is that fair? That's how you got here. You started thinking about this in step 3, and then you began focusing it more and more and more.
Yes.
Yeah. So Gurleen, do you see how Bawin got here now?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah, she asked a bunch of very general questions. And so Gurleen's question is really important. She asked a bunch of really general questions about the topic. And as she did that, she began to realize, oh, what I'm interested in is actually the teaching methods part of modern education. So then she focused on that in steps 4, 5, and 6 to get to here.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, great question, Gurleen.
Thank you.
So that's reading 1. And What Bowen has is, well, she's got a whole bunch. So now she can look at each one and say, yeah, I think this one will also still be useful to me. This one will still be useful to me. Oh, forgot to put the link in. That's the wrong one. So Bowen, of these articles, you still think that they connect to your interest in teaching methods?
Yes.
Okay, great. And that's all you really need. Like, as long as you're confident that. So you notice all I'm doing is copying and pasting each into the table. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? There we go. So, post reply. I think I have to hit refresh. There we are. So, the reason we did this work in the research process, and the reason we redid it today, was to arrive at a simple problem solution question, cause-effect question, or a compare and contrast question, which we are now using to organize the reading we're going to do. Because at some point we're going to have to read the articles. But our goal is not to read and understand every single part of the article. We don't actually care about every single part of the article. The only thing we care about from this article are examples or ideas that directly answer these two questions. That's it. When we find them, Bowen records them here. If she does not find them, well, guess what? This is not an article that's going to be useful. So if you find the answers and you record them in your notes, because that's what this table is. It's your notes you're going to use to write your outline and then your essay. Because all of the examples, quotations, paraphrases, and summaries she finds, those are the ones she's going to use next week when she's writing her essay. If she doesn't find any useful ones from this article, cross it out, go to the next one. The goal is to have at least 3 academic and 3 non-academic. Each one with ideas that will help you answer your two questions.
Excuse me, Professor.
Yes, Gersimer.
As I asked you earlier, this research should be specific to a certain area, or it could be like globally. Like these problems exist in these countries or in these countries, or
Okay.
a specific country.
So look at your question right now. The question you have written right now. Is it focused on one geographical area, or is it anywhere?
It's anywhere.
Okay. Will what you find from one country be different from to the next country?
Yeah, I find like 2 articles.
No, that's not what I mean. Not the articles, but the answers you're going to find to your questions.
I guess there's gonna be some difference.
Okay. Will those differences matter to your discussion?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean,
So
if they are giving me the answer like, okay, so this is the problem that their education system is failing, so I can write that, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, so you could write that. So I often recommend start with examples and articles from the same country, the same geographical area, because the same situation is happening there. If you find that is not working or you're not finding enough, then you start increasing the geographical area. Like, I would not compare India and Switzerland. Why would I not compare India and Switzerland?
Because there is going to be a lot difference in between like their education system.
Okay, but be even more basic. Are they anywhere near each other?
No.
No. Could I compare India and China?
Yeah.
Yeah,
To
they're
some
right
extent.
next to. Yeah, they're right next to each other. So that is a useful comparison to make. Or looking at examples from the same part of the world. China and Canada. Is there a connection between those two countries?
No, not much.
Well, there is one.
I mean, there are many immigrants from like India to Canada, and from same in like sense from China to Canada also.
So then that comparison, looking at articles from both those two areas, makes sense. But there are not a lot of Indian immigrants in, say, Germany. So looking at India and Germany doesn't really make sense. Same thing goes China and Japan. They're right next to each other, but in their history, they haven't really liked each other very much. And so there are not a lot of Chinese students that study in Japan, so that may not be a useful discussion because the education systems are actually very different. So think about the connection first in one geographical area and then grow from there. And the logical or the reasonable ones. If two countries are side by side, that's a reasonable one. Or if they have some type of history of trade, maybe their economies are linked in some way, or immigration. Like Chinese immigrants have been coming to Canada for over 200 years. Immigrants from India have been coming to Canada for at least 150. So there's a history there. So it makes sense to do that connection and comparison.
Okay.
Is that okay,
So
Gersimer?
can I like compare China and USA because they have some connection between them?
Yeah, like Chinese immigrants have been coming to the United
Yeah.
States for over 300 years.
Yes, because when I was finding the articles in the library database, there were more like articles related to China and US.
Yeah, so that's a great way. And then if someone asked you, why did you pick those two countries? You say, well, they have a long history of especially Chinese students coming to study in America and then returning, and vice versa now. More and more American students are going to Chinese schools and then back as well. And also economics, the two largest economies in the world. They have to be partners. They have to learn to trade with each other and be nice to each other. Otherwise, the rest of us are going to be in trouble. So think about why you're using articles from different countries. And if there's a clear connection between those countries, use it. But if you have to spend a few minutes thinking about a connection, that probably means stay away. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So looking at the table I've put in front of you, this is for Bowen, but all of us. When she goes to read this article, does she have to read and make sense of every single paragraph?
No.
No. What are the only two ideas she's looking for?
The two questions.
Exactly. That's it. Everything else she can ignore. So in this way, she's now organized all of the reading she has to do, and she'll be able to do this reading of these academic articles much quicker because she knows exactly what she's looking for. And that's why we've now spent 2 days on the research process. Because often when you're asked to write a research essay, we go, oh, okay, I will go start finding articles and then reading them. But because I don't know much about my topic, I don't really know what are the important ideas I should be paying attention to. We've now spent almost 5 hours, if you consider last class and today, just thinking about, well, what does my topic mean? And what specific things am I interested in answering? And that's what these two questions represent. These are meant to help and focus all of the reading that Bowen now has to do. Like, that's why we did all this. To save ourselves the headache of having to make sense of every single sentence and paragraph in these articles. Now Bowen knows I'm only looking for two things in all of them. If I find it, great. If I don't, find a new article that has these two things in it. So for Bowen and everyone else, are you able to make this table right now using your existing question, your simple question, the two-parter? Naomi's shaking her head. I think she's confident. You can do this, right, Naomi?
Yes, but I think I still need to search more essay.
Okay, yeah. And so I would say start with the ones you have, and then add a few more, get up to maybe 6 or 7 total, and then start doing the reading. If you find that the first few are useful, keep going. What you do is you record what you find here in the discussion. This is where I want you to put your notes. So actually, when you're reading, so for Bowen, she'll have this open in front of her, and when she's reading this Modern Education, A Tragedy of the Commons, she's writing her examples, her ideas here, what she finds in the article. And then she can also put the citation in or the page number in, so she doesn't have to do that later. So page 749. She has now everything she will need. She will never have to look at that article again. She can do in-text citations, and she can do the work cited in her essay using just this one table. And if she finds that she does not have enough articles, well, that's part of the purpose of the table. Just keep adding more lines and putting more articles in until you've got a bunch of examples for each question. Your goal, your homework, in fact, for next class is to have a minimum of 6 to 7. 6 to 7 minimum. Quotations, paraphrases, summaries in the first column, problems. 6 to 7 minimum possible solutions in this column. If you have more, great, but minimum 6 or 7. Simmer, you have a question?
Yes. So for this, we have to like look into the articles.
Yeah. So that's the next part. You've thought about your topic. You figured out the simple questions you're going to try to answer. Now you have to start looking at reading the articles to find examples, to find ideas you will use in your essay when you start the writing process next week. This is just the thinking about, then organizing your notes, reading, and making your notes. And all of your notes go into this table. Is that okay, everyone? And more importantly, ask questions.
So do I have to read the whole article?
Bowen, Naomi, can you answer that for Gersimer?
No.
Okay. What instead should he focus on?
Focus on which paragraph of the article is showing your question.
On the abstract?
Like we used to do before, read the first line of the paragraph.
Gersimer?
Yes,
So
Professor.
you are going to have to be reading at this point. Like, there's no avoiding the reading part. That's what the research is. But when you look at the first line of each paragraph, does it answer this question? If yes, focus on the paragraph. If no, skip it. Same thing goes for the second simple question. Does the first line connect to that simple question? Yes? Great. Focus on that paragraph. No? Skip it. Gersimer, is that okay?
Yes, Professor.
Okay. And Sungmin has a great question. If one resource can be used to answer both questions, great. That means that's actually a great article. And you can just count it as one. But the point is, don't think of it now as, oh, I need so many articles. Now you need so many examples and ideas for the outline and essay you're going to write. So you want to have at least in this first column 6 or 7 ideas you could use. In this column, 6 or 7. If you can get those 6 or 7 from reading just 6 or 7 articles, great. But you might find that some of the articles will give you a problem, but that's it, and not a solution. So you'll have to go a bit more in some cases, or there might be 3 different problems you can get from one article. Great. That's 3. If your goal is to have 6 or 7 minimum, I usually aim for about 10. That way I can pick and choose the ones I want to use. So here's what we're going to ask you to do. Last thing, and then we're done. Find your question, the one you just wrote, the simple one. Hit reply, and then make this table for yourself. You'll put in your articles here, you'll put in first question and then the second question, because this will then be your homework. You're going to fill in the rest of the table by doing the reading between now and Monday. So over the next 5 days, you're reading. You'll notice that you're not having to read every single line of every single article. In fact, you're only looking for one idea or two ideas from each article. So the research now, it can be done much, much faster. Any questions?
Not yet.
Okay. Post. Yes, please.
Do we need to post this by replying?
Yeah, so what you can do, well, Bowen, I did it for you. That's why I asked for a volunteer, because I said you'll thank me for it, because I did the work for you.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, no problem. I was trying to convince people, volunteer. This will be...
Professor, can I volunteer now?
No, you cannot. You're going to do the work yourself. But Bowen, what you can do is you can now edit this post. So for homework, you can edit and then write what you find directly into here. So by Monday's class, you'll all have a full set of notes that we can then start thinking about, okay, how are we now going to organize the writing? Remember what I promised you last class when we started this? 1 week of just thinking about and researching. And then 2 weeks of writing. So, right now, before you go, post your table. Complete, just like Bowen has right here. You'll have each of your articles posted. If you still need to find more, that's fine. Leave room for them, but put the ones you can. Put your questions at the top. And once that's posted, class is over for you. Your homework will be filling in the rest of the table. I'm going to, in probably about 10 minutes time, just go in and make sure everyone has posted a table for themselves. Is that okay? And if you haven't posted a table in 10 minutes, I will probably send you a message saying, hey, what's up? Because you can't really do the homework until you have this table. Because your goal, your homework, you're going to fill in the table. I'm going to stop sharing. Bowen, great job making that table. See, it pays to volunteer because sometimes I'll just do the work for you.
Thank you once again, Professor.
No problem. But remember, next time in the final exam, you're going to have to be able to do this work yourself. But I'm hoping what you noticed, well, that was incredibly easy because all I did was copy and paste. So, Bowen, class is over for you. You are welcome to leave. Everyone else, get your table posted. And as I just said to Bowen, it's a copy and paste. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'll check it in about 10 minutes time. If I notice someone has not posted, I'm going to send you a message saying, hey, where's your table? By Monday's class, all of your tables will be full of quotations, paraphrases, and summaries that you found from your readings. And then in Monday's class, which is self-directed, I'm actually going to guide you through. Now, here's what you do first with this table notes. Here's what you do second with your table notes. Here's what you do third, fourth, fifth, sixth to make an outline. If you run into any problems or you have questions, send me an email. I am going to end the Zoom call now, but you all have the one thing I'm going to ask you to finish in the next few minutes. Post your table. I'm going to stay online, and if I notice someone hasn't posted a table, I'm going to be emailing them, asking them why.
Professor.
Yes, Curly.
Is Monday's class is self-directed?
It's a self-directed class. In order to take part, your table needs to be done.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And you will want to log in at normal class time, because you have to have your outline done by, I'm giving you 12 hours to do the whole thing. It's really about 2 hours of work. So make sure you log in first thing just to see what you're being asked to do. And then you can organize the work you need to do throughout the day. But you might as well just do it during class time so you're done. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the conversation back and forth, people asking questions as we go. That is great. That's the point of how I'm running this last 3 weeks. So we talk about your understanding or sometimes your misunderstanding. People volunteer, and then I'll demonstrate, oh, this is how this person would do it. So next time we see each other, Yoon, Naomi, Scarlett, Gersimer, Gerline, try to volunteer first.
Yeah, Professor.
Okay. Professor, how do I copy the table?
Oh, yeah, you can. A few different ways to do that. You could just make your own by... Do you see this button here? When you open a new post? So you could just make your own table by going table and then saying, I want it 3 wide and maybe 10 down. So that's one option. The other is you can just go like that and copy the whole thing and paste it into yours and then delete the parts you don't need.
Okay, Professor. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Andy. Okay. I'm going to end the Zoom call, our meeting. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stay logged on for about 10 minutes or so and just make sure everybody posts a table. Thanks, Seungmin. Now your
Thank
homework.
you, Professor. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Professor.
Have a good
Remember,
weekend.
your homework this weekend. Fill in your table.